Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome back, and thank you once again for tuning in to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley, and we are almost through the month of November 21st. And we got a little bit of time left. We got a great Thanksgiving holiday still coming our way. But with all of that happening, we're getting closer and closer to winter meetings, which means we have a lot that we need to talk about in the baseball world. There's a lot of off seasons going on right now. MLB, NBA, news just coming from everywhere. So we're going to have to make sure that we get you caught up on news and noise around the league. We're going to be talking about some transaction rumors as well. There is potential that we're hearing about a couple big stars that could potentially be on the move in the trade market. We also need to talk about, well, what is the next steps? What's the to-do list for a lot of our teams in baseball? And that is going for our teams in the National League and the American League. Your next steps, very important, whether it be contention, you're looking to be in the World Series conversation, go far in the playoffs, win your division, whatever, or the rebuild, collecting as many assets as you possibly can, developing some of the young players you have. We got a lot we got to talk about. We're going to touch upon all 30 teams and see, well, what's the next step? What do we need to do moving forward? But we're going to start things off with news and noise, getting you caught up on all these teams around the league with some transaction news, some other big news that's happening around the league. We're going to start things off with a little bit of news that has to deal with how we're adjusting some of our rosters at the moment. The Tampa Bay Rays, our American League champions and one of our two teams, a part of the World Series, have decided to designate outfielder Hunter Renfroe for assignment, helping clear room on the 40-man roster. Renfroe is only 28 years old. He appeared in 42 games last year, 34 starts in that pandemic-shortened season. And you might think right away, well, 34 starts, we had 60 games, and we only started half. You also got to remember this Tampa Bay Rays team, they did a lot of moving around with their lineup. Never were having consistent lineups at all when it came to their season. Renfroe also was the first person to ever hit a grand slam in Tampa Bay Rays postseason history in their wild card sweep of the Blue Jays. Renfroe, though, struggled a little bit last year, batted .156, 8 home runs, 22 RBIs in his first season with Tampa Bay. He started 6 of 12 games in the postseason, which was good experience for him, but still only batting .174 with 2 home runs and 7 RBIs. The Rays had acquired Renfroe from San Diego last year. They sent Tommy Pham and Jake Cronenworth to the Padres, and they probably really feel like they are losing that trade right now, as Cronenworth tied for second in the National League. Rookie of the Year balloting. Tommy Pham is probably still considered to be a very capable player, had some injury issues last year, so they're going to be moving on from Renfroe. They also designated infielder-outfielder Brian O'Grady. 28-year-old spent a lot of time at the alternate site for the Tampa Bay Rays in Port Charlotte. He appeared in 2 games over 2 stints with the Rays, so not a lot of action for him. These moves help clear, like we said, 40-man roster space. They brought in outfielder Josh Lowe, right-handed pitcher Drew Strotman, and infielder Taylor Walls. We're going to be seeing this, I think, happening a little bit more as we are moving throughout the offseason. And another team that we actually did recently see make this type of move would be the Baltimore Orioles, as they cut ties with one of their top sluggers so that they could clear some space for some of their prospects on the 40-man roster. So Renato Nunez was designated for assignment. Bunch of transactions that were going on. And this was just interesting because he's been leading the Orioles since 2019 with 43 home runs. He was mainly been a DH, but they've decided to move on with him. Batted .256 last season with 12 home runs and 31 RBIs in 52 games. And, he wasn't awful. He wasn't awful for them. So I was very intrigued by the move, but ultimately the Orioles want to add some prospects to their roster as well, and they ended up picking up the contracts, selecting contracts of 5 of their top 30 prospects to their 40-man roster. Outfielder Yusniel Diaz. They had right-handed pitcher Michael Baumann, left-handed pitcher Zach Lothar, left-handed pitcher Alexander Wells, and then an infielder Rylan Bannon. And there was just a lot of moves going on for the Orioles. And like I said, we're going to be seeing this happening throughout a lot of different teams making these moves, bringing in younger guys, some designating for assignments. So nothing crazy surprising here, but still newsworthy all the same. Now we have to talk about our little bit of a collection on suspension stories. Not something that's exciting for a lot of fan bases, but yet here it is all the same. Starting off with the New York Yankees, Aroldis Chapman had a suspension reduced to 2 games on an appeal. This suspension came for throwing near the head of Tampa Bay's Mike Brousseau. It was reduced from 3 games to 2 games after he had appealed the decision. MLB announced the result on Thursday, and this was just a big-time story from 2 rivals right now in MLB, I should almost say, with Tampa Bay and the Yankees having a lot of heated games recently. If you did not see this happen, Chapman threw a 101-mile-per-hour fastball near Brousseau's head. First pitch to a pinch hitter with 2 outs in the 9th inning. And the umps, this was one of the times where they were issuing warnings to both benches. They ejected Kevin Cash. There was just a big fallout from all of this. Kind of led to the whole story that had to do with we have a stable of guys that can throw 98. Big fun storyline for Tampa Bay throughout the season. But Aroldis Chapman, lucky enough, had that suspension reduced a little bit. So going from 3 games to 2. And staying within the New York City limits, we had another massive suspension come through. The New York Mets' Robinson Cano is banned for the entire 2021 MLB season because of performance-enhancing drugs. Now, Cano tested positive, and this is coming down from a statement from MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred. It is his 2nd suspension. And at age 38, this hurts to be losing a full season of your career. He missed 80 games in 2018 after testing positive for PEDs, and that was with the Mariners. So this second one has to be a full season, and this is ultimately going to be interesting in a lot of different ways. First off, what it looks like to Robinson Cano and his ultimate career outlook. Now, I just did an episode where we talked a lot about the Hall of Fame and players that could potentially be coming in. He might have just took a big knock to his career and how he's going to be perceived when that day comes, having to look at any type of Hall of Fame considerations. I mean, 2 positive tests with PEDs, not going to be a great thing for you. The other thing that gets interesting here is now Mets roster construction because of this. Cano was going to be second base or DH, depending on what ends up happening, but now that's an open spot. So, does that make some other players in free agency a little more interesting, a little more potential? I'm looking at you, DJ LeMahieu. Is this move be a reason why the Mets go all in and try to steal someone from their crosstown rival? Just something to be pointing at a little bit. And unfortunate. Now, Robinson Cano could end up forfeiting $24 million in salary because of this, being a massive hit. And this just ultimately is a big conversation because Cano, coming from the Mariners, was a part of the trade of Jarred Kelenic to the Mariners, which was a big-time prospect for them, was also a trade that was bringing over other players, but ultimately the Mets were taking Cano's contract as the big kind of get out of this. Very interesting to see what's going to happen with it moving forward. I have to say, with all the positives that have been going on with the Mets, new ownership, willingness to spend, getting some excitement with the team, it definitely was a speed bump. I am sure that new ownership did not want to have to deal with, but hey, There it is. Sorry for it. So we'll see what happens with Cano moving forward, but losing a full season at 38, like we said, is not something you want to be dealing with. Staying over on that East Coast, the Boston Red Sox, having Will Venable as their bench coach and Alex Cora's return to the team, being hired to be on Alex Cora's staff. Now, Venable spent the past 3 seasons with the Chicago Cubs as a first and third base coach, with after a 12-year playing career as a major league outfielder, playing with mostly the San Diego Padres. Venable, whose father Max also spent a lot of years in the majors, played both basketball and baseball at Princeton. The Red Sox have also said that Jason Varitek has been named game planning coordinator. Ramon Vasquez will be the quality control coach and interpreter. And Kevin Walker has been named bullpen coach. So we have a lot of different moves going on in the Red Sox organization. And it's funny with all of this happening. It almost feels like it was snuck in at the perfect time with everything going on in the world with election season and everything. Alex Cora's return seems very light. Like it came through pretty quickly. And like I've been on record of saying this. I really am happy that Cora's back as a Red Sox fan because I thought he was a great manager at the time. Served his suspension. But just more moves. More moves coming on top of it for the Red Sox in this offseason. And one last transaction piece of news that we have, going back to those New York Mets. They signed 6'7" pitcher Sam McWilliams to a 1-year deal. Spent 6 years in the minor leagues with 3 organizations. 25-year-old is going to get $750,000 in the majors and $195,000 in the minors. 6'7", going to the 60-player pool. He was with Tampa Bay a lot of last year. He has 30 and 35 in his career, 3.85 ERA, making 94 starts and 15 relief appearances. Williams pitched in Philadelphia and Arizona systems as well. It's an upside move, banking move, seeing if you can pull something out of it. The Mets just taking a risk, seeing if they can find something with McWilliams, but it's just a grabbing headline, isn't it? 6'7". That mound is already lifted up, already tall enough. Then we put a guy like that. It's intimidating. That's an intimidating thing. Maybe that's the move they're going for there. Just put someone really big out on the pitcher's mound and hope, hey, I'm going to scare the guy who's in the batter's box a little bit. Could work. Who knows? But that's going to be it for news and noise around the league, getting you caught up on all 30 teams. Light news. A lot of suspension and sad news with guys kind of being dumped off rosters a little bit. But we're hopeful that these guys can get a second chance, maybe get picked up by another team. You never know. The MLB is weird like that. You might be designated for assignment because you were struggling somewhere, but you'll get picked up, go to a new team, and a change of scenery. It really seems to do wonders. But like we said, that's going to be it for news and noise. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we need to talk about that transaction rumor mill. What are all the rumors that are currently circling around the MLB, getting you caught up on all that? And I have to tell you, there are some big names that could potentially be coming, on the move, going to some new teams. So we're going to talk about that after a quick break here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Rumor mill keeps on turning, it looks like, and we have some new names picking up a little bit of steam. Now, I don't want to sit here and pretend like we haven't talked about these guys in the past, potential that they could be moved, but it looks like there's at least a little bit of building steam in some directions. The big one that is getting a little attention recently is Chris Bryant with the Chicago Cubs. Now, the Cubs are going to be interesting because they have quite a few players that could potentially be available and on the move. That core of guys from the World Series team that we thought were going to probably be sticking together and being a strong foundation for many years, it's contract time and it's getting very difficult to think about keeping all of them, especially with some up and down performances, and last year being a very down performance for some of their big time stars. So, the Nationals are a team that have recently jumped in, having some considerations for Chris Bryant. Now, third base is a weakness in this offseason in the sense of big names. So that's why some sources have told MLB.com's John Paul Morosi that these talks might potentially be happening. Bryant is one of the number of hitters that the club is actually looking at, that's being the Nationals, but there are others. They've also been hearing there's some interest for the Nationals in DJ LeMahieu, and Washington had previously been linked a little bit to JT Realmuto as well. So there's a lot going on in Nats camp. Some really big changes, like I said before, could be coming to the Cubs with a lot of guys being in an interesting spot. Now, Bryant was not great last year. 284 batting average in his first 5 seasons, won an MVP in 2016. That was great. But last year was not. And Bryant, Javier Baez, Anthony Rizzo, Kyle Schwarber are all eligible for free agency after this season. So you'd almost be looking to trade these guys. I think it's harder to necessarily get a big return when it's just a half rental for a big-time star. Those rentals for half a year are better when it's just filling a weakness. But stars, it gets to be difficult. The Nationals have that hole at third base too, especially with Anthony Rendon leaving last season and performing pretty well for the Angels. They're probably trying to fill that gap the best way that they can. We've heard that the Nationals could be an interesting team in the past. They're going to be involved in some of these names, quite a few of them. It makes sense. They're trying to pair something with Trey Turner, with Juan Soto, and build a team here as some pitching is hopefully coming back. Starting pitching have a little bit of a strength there. So we'll see if this ends up going anywhere further. It's going to be interesting because Asdrubal Cabrera is a guy that's going to be there for the Nationals, so that's the guy right now. And Chris Bryant might just be the upgrade that the team is looking for, especially if they can get him closer to the way he performed in that 2016 season. Another name that's starting to pick up a little bit of traction in the trade market, another guy we've talked about before, is Nolan Arenado. And the thing is, it's not interesting or crazy at all in any means that he's getting any attention on the trade market. No, that's something as well we talked about, as he has an opt-out after this season, but also in the right situation could be a long-term player at the third base position or even transitioning anywhere else, but that's later in his career. But he has an extension that could go for quite a while with just having that opt-out. And the team that's showing a little bit of interest, well, staying in the National League West, is the Los Angeles Dodgers. One of the MLB's best rosters already, loaded farm system, have Mookie Betts signed up to an extension. Why not add to it? Why not? And it looks like they're showing that interest, trying to potentially make a move, put two stars together, and stay loaded, stay locked up, and hey, let's go for another title next year. Now, the Dodgers really aren't pressured to do anything. Now, they have some depth and a couple guys in free agency like Justin Turner leaving, so it's no shock. It's no shock that they're looking at third base. And Arenado has been brought up. He's a guy from Southern California and player that the Dodgers have loved for many, many, many years. So let's not be surprised if this potentially goes anywhere. So just something to monitor. Arenado's name is going to heat up as this offseason continues to go because of that opt-out clause. I don't know if the Rockies think he's going to stay long term, especially if it's another down season. Now, he's locked into a lot of money. A lot of money. But he may want to better his situation in the sense of where he can compete and maybe win. So he's going to be picking up a lot of steam. We'll see where that happens moving forward. And man, if it's the Dodgers, then the rich just keep getting richer. Another interesting one, pitching help. Is it finally coming to the Angels? Well, maybe in small increments here. The Angels are among the teams that are showing some interest in veteran left-hander J.A. Happ. This is another story being broken from MLB.com's John Palmarosi. Notes that it shouldn't come as any surprise, knowing that the new general manager, Perry Minasian, for the Angels, he was in the Blue Jays front office when Toronto had gotten J.A. Happ earlier in his career, so there's a little bit of a connection there. And like we said, any pitching help. The Angels need any pitching help they can get. Mike Trout, superstar. Ohtani, big-time player. Rendon, even Pujols wasn't great. I mean, they got players. Joe Adell, they have offense there. Offense is not the issue. It's getting the pitching to go along with it and keep some guys off the board. Keep those other teams' runs down. So, not a crazy new story, but if there is a suitor there for J.A. Happ, hey, the Angels throwing their hat into the ring. George Springer. There is some major concern and thought that his time in Houston could be done. Now, the Astros have been a contender since about 2015, and George Springer has been a big reason why. We have gotten some news recently that MLB.com Astros beat reporter Brian McTaggart is among a bunch of other sources who are starting to think that George Springer will not be back. And I don't find this surprising as well, because he is going to be probably considered one of our top value guys in the offseason. He has the potential to get paid and get a big contract, but also has the opportunity to get away from the entire situation with Houston. It's a conversation I've had with a few people as of recently, wondering if some of these players are just going to try to get away from the situation, from the big scandal they just had. Clearing themselves, trying to wash their hands clean, move on, move in a different direction. And I would not be surprised. There's quite a few players that are going to be considering moving on. And George Springer, with the potential payday that could be coming his way, moving on from Houston might be happening in the future. Some other news and some other free agents. Well, Nelson Cruz is sitting in a very interesting situation. Now, the designated hitter that was instituted in the National League, it's not necessarily a guarantee for 2021. And that means it could have a major impact on the free agent market for players that are considered to just be in the DH position, aka Nelson Cruz. Now, Cruz's bat was very good last year. Very good. So he's going to have some suitors regardless if half the league does not have the DH. But shelling out money for a guy that maybe isn't going to be too solid for you defensively is a risky move for a lot of National League teams. So the thought right now is that he is going to potentially hold off a little bit. Unlikely to sign until there's any type of clarity on whether or not we are going to be seeing a DH in the National League. This, I think, is bad news for the Minnesota Twins, as they were probably very hopeful to be having him back. But if he wants to wait and see if the National League has that option, that means one of two things. One, he is trying to look elsewhere and see what other options are out there. Two, he's waiting to see if we have a DH in all 30, that maybe his price will be driven up a little bit. Either way, not good news for the Twins. Not good news. So, Nelson, I think it's a smart waiting game. Man's 40 years old. He knows he's going to get a contract somewhere. He knows there's some contenders that would be interested. Like we said, the Twins. The White Sox would be a team that would definitely be in on this. The Indians need to pick up some offensive help. Maybe they will be looking to it. There's going to be teams. There's going to be teams interested. I think he's making a very smart play on this. So we'll see what happens there. The New York Mets, have we talked about them in this offseason yet? Are recently believed to be one of the top suitors to be in on Indian shortstop Francisco Lindor. But he isn't the only big-name trade candidate that they're considering. Now, this is conversation just because of the Lindor, but the Mets have also been rumored to be a team in on Nolan Arenado as well. This offseason rumor circulation is going to be continuing around the Mets until a move is actually made. I don't know how they could possibly come out of this offseason without making some sort of move. It might go down as a catastrophic failure for them if they end up not really doing anything, because they're being linked to all of these big names. Whether it be trades or free agency, it just sounds like right now teams believe, yeah, they're in on it. They're in on it. They could potentially be a team. They could potentially be the... So, don't be surprised if the trade market is also another way that they decide to go looking. It's going to be troublesome for the Mets if a move does not end up happening. But Lindor, Arenado, all the free agents, they're getting their name thrown out there. That's a positive. That's the positive. Now are they able to close? That's what we're going to have to see. One other bit of news, at least rumors that we're seeing. Teams have been starting to call the Pittsburgh Pirates with interest in trading for left-handed pitcher Steven Brault. And it's one name that's starting to be picking up a little bit, mainly because there's a lot of good things going with Brault and his contract along with his play. 3 years of control. Career best year, 3.38 ERA in 2020. Means he won't be a free agent until 2023-24. That's a lot of value in a trade chip. First year of arbitration eligibility, this is it. He's in his first season. So he's under team control for quite a while. He was the best pitcher for the Pirates. Now, obviously, I know that may not be saying a lot, but 3.38 ERA, like we said, 38 strikeouts in 42 and 2/3 innings over 11 outings. 10 of them were starts. Lowered his ERA by almost 2 full runs compared to 2019. And that's where things get interesting. When you have a very, very bad team and you improve your stats that much from one season to the next, that's when you start to grab some attention. So, Steven Brault be another name to watch on this trade market. There's a lot of conversation going on. There's still conversation going on with Josh Hader. There's stuff there. This offseason is relatively feels like an unknown right now. We have a lot of big names that could be on the move, but let's see if it truly happens. Potential to be a big-time offseason. Be crazy. A lot of movement. Whether that be free agent or trading. I'm excited for it. I'm excited. That first domino just needs to fall. We get that first one, I think we're going to see a lot more moves come into play. At least that's the feel right now as we're observing a lot of this. So, that's it for our transaction rumor mill for this episode. Fun to talk about. I love when the trade targets start coming in. Free agency is fun, don't get me wrong. But when the trade name's starting to get a little bit of traction, now we're really cooking. So we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we need to start talking about some teams' off-season to-do lists. What are the things that we are going to be looking for in teams moving forward? Coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be, visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
While officially the big name signings have not quite started, that doesn't mean that we don't have a ton of teams that have moves to be made. All 30 clubs obviously looking to improve their teams this year, whether it be through asset gaining or trying to get that big name to move towards what's potentially going to be the thing that puts them over the edge into contention. Well, we want to take the time to look at it and talk about truly what is going to be the biggest issue for every team moving forward so that they can have the best possible 2021 season. And we're going to go really division by division. We're going to go each team. We're going to be talking about, this was a big time ESPN article that brings up a lot of this, and going to be putting our thoughts on this as well. They had an off-season checklist. I'm looking at more as to-do list. This is stuff that you need to get done. This is what you need to be looking for. So we're going to break this down team by team, starting things off with the Atlanta Braves. And what their biggest issue is, to-do list they have to do, is making sure that their outfield takes a little bit of a boost and potentially replacing Marcell Ozuna's bat. So now, the Braves have a strong offensive lineup. We know that, with the guys that are already there. But there is going to be a big question on whether or not Marcell Ozuna is going to be back. I think the Braves would love to have him back at the right price. They're not going to get a one-year steal deal on him anymore. He showed his value, his offensive production last year. Yes, his defense could 100% be a question, but it doesn't really seem to matter, because all that is telling me is teams in the American League will also be interested to slide him into a DH position if you're going to be that productive of a bat. So what's going to end up being the way that you boost your outfield if Ozuna for sure is going to leave? Now, there is some depth moves out there, but they don't need to go crazy. I have my concerns also with their pitching. I have to say it. But their rotation is cheap right now and young, and they had shown a lot of potential. So that pitching staff might actually not change a great deal. It could. They could bring a name in if they really wanted to, but it might stay pretty similar, especially if they think they're going to have a healthy, full rotation that they're used to. So that's going to be the big question for them. What are you going to do in your outfield? Is Ozuna's bat's going to be back? For the Miami Marlins, how are you going to balance young up-and-comers with the veterans? And they need to build off the winning momentum. This team was fun and exciting with everything that went on in the 2020 season. They have some of the young pitching that's great. They also have some young positional players, Lewin Diaz, Jazz Chisholm. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. And how are they going to balance? What do they want to do going into this season? Are they going to roll it back with a lot of the guys that played for them? Or are they going to start trying to throw in some of these young players? This offseason is going to get interesting for Miami. Truly, because we don't know how they're going to spend if they spend at all. I really think they're going to stay in-house with a lot of what they have and just roll it back and see if they have something true. But they could be the team that just gets in on maybe one move or two, just depth move, maybe boost their bullpen. I don't think their offseason is going to be too crazy. The New York Mets, how big is ownership going to spend? We talk about it plenty. I don't know if I need to dive into this one too much. Real Muto, Bauer, LeMahieu. I feel like everyone's on the table in free agency. And then when we go to the trade market, Lindor, Bryant, Arenado, there's so many things that the Mets can do. And I don't know if it's a willing of if they will spend, but more when they will spend and how much. And how much. The Mets are going to be aggressive. I don't think there's really much else to it. Philadelphia Phillies, how are they going to handle the JT Realmuto situation? I don't think they can afford to lose him. I really don't. With the amount of money they have committed to this roster over the years, they really think they should be a playoff team and winning. What they gave Harper, what they've given other players, they've made the move to go get, Gene Segura into this lineup. They paid Andrew McCutchen a little bit, Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler. They have a lot of money in that. They've taken the risk. They traded prospects for JT Realmuto. And with the unknown of Didi Gregorius, if he's going to be back, they can't afford to lose guys that are going to help their team. And Realmuto might be the best catcher in baseball. So they're going to have to get in on that situation and see if they can get him back. He's going to be tough. He's going to be the big name for the Phillies. Then lastly, in the American League East, those Washington Nationals. Now, they will have to really put their lineup together. They have some young, fun, exciting players. We talked about it before. Trey Turner, Juan Soto. Starlin Castro is there now. Not young anymore, but he's there. Carter Kieboom, 23, pre-arbitration guy. They don't have a lot of crazy depth at the moment. And then when it looks at starters, if their starters are healthy, that's great, but they're all over 30. Max Scherzer, Patrick Corbin, Steven Strasburg. What are you going to do there? So recently they have lost, Harper, Rendon. Ryan Zimmerman didn't play last year, but he's a free agent as well. They've been losing players that have been a big part of their depth and strong team. Now it's time to fill some of these gaps. So what are they going to do to solve any lineup problems they have? Well, we just brought up the fact that they could be an interesting team moving forward in free agency and the trade market as well. They're exploring that Chris Bryant. So it looks like they're trying to get something done. But can you do it and can you turn it around and contend next year? I think the NL East is open. I think it's open. There's potential there. So what are they going to end up doing with it? Moving over to the NL Central, the Chicago Cubs, where we're going to start. How are they going to do this one last year, this one last run with that World Series core? All right, Bryant, Baez, Schwarber, Rizzo. This might be the last hurrah while they're all there. Some of them might be traded before the season officially gets going. But I don't even know if there's a lot of confidence in most of these guys getting contracts to return. So this might be the last chance for them. What is it going to look like? What are they going to do? Maybe halfway through the year, are they going to be done with it? They got some interesting pitching. Yu Darvish had a great Cy Young caliber season. Kyle Hendricks, he was solid for him at 31. Pretty good pitcher. We still got other guys we got to talk about. Wilson Contreras, Ian Happ, Jason Hayward had an all right season. It's just they got a lot of money locked up in some places and a lot of contract decisions to be made. And they're just not going to sign all these guys. It's not going to happen. So what's going to be the next move? Do they trade guys now? Do they wait till the trade market comes and the trade deadline? A lot of questions they have to answer. And you know what? It's going to be answered by someone new in the front office as well. As we just saw some major shakeups happen there. So Cubs, it almost feels like your clock is ticking a little bit. Cincinnati Reds, their question is about Trevor Bauer. If he doesn't come back, what are you going to do to make it that you're good enough to be a postseason team? They went in last year. They still have Luis Castillo. They still have Sonny Gray. Wade Miley's back, but he was up and down. Michael Lorenzen's going to have to probably slide into the starting lineup. Not be your bullpen guy anymore. Is your team going to bounce back and be good enough offensively? You spent the money last year to be an offensive powerhouse. Is the full season going to be the reason that it happens? I'm in wait and see mode with the Reds. If they lose Bauer, they're going to be a team that's going to look to trade. They've been talked about with Lindor before. But I almost want to see what they are like in a full season because I thought that offense could be potent last year, and it just never really got fully clicking. I'd like to see what it is like in the 2021 season. Milwaukee Brewers, their payroll. What are you going to do to put your team together? Is Josh Hader going to be traded? What's going to happen in free agency? I just don't have any clue what their full starting lineup is going to look like next year. Now they have Navarez, Castanheira, Arcia, Urias, Yelich, Kane, Garcia. But I don't know if there's a lot of confidence in those guys. Christian Yelich, if he bounces back, is a top-end player. Castanheira also can be a very good player for you. You have two solid starters in Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, and two back-end bullpen guys that are great in Hader and Devin Williams. But it's the gaps after your studs that I just don't truly believe in much. So where are they going to go? The Brewers, I feel like some shakeups need to be made, but they're not going to be free agent players. They just aren't. So what dumpster diving are you going to do to fill out the rest of your team? Whew. It could be an interesting offseason for the Milwaukee Brewers and their fans. Pittsburgh Pirates, hey, add talent. Free agency, maybe you take some buy low guys and see if you can get something out of them, but also sell high on all of your other players that aren't going to be there when things turn around. That could be a lot of different guys. So I'm interested to see what happens with Adam Frazier. What happens with Colin Moran? What happens with Josh Bell? Now, there's some control there, some contract control, which means there's going to be value. But I don't think they can get stingy on a lot of these players just because they have contract control. Get the prospects that you can because your future, you need assets. You need assets for Pittsburgh to start competing. I would start that rebuild now because the Cubs, the Reds, the Brewers, they're all going to be interesting in a few years because we don't really know where they're going. Even the Cardinals are going to have their questions. Rebuild now, and the Pirates hope that they put something together and get to be more competitive down the line. And then, talking about those Cardinals, going right back to them, what are you going to do to add to the lineup? You need offense. You need it. I'm wondering about Azuña coming back. Also, we need to talk about, is Yadier Molina going to be back? What's your catcher situation? Now, is Yadier Molina going to be the guy that absolutely shifts them one way or the other? No. But he's still one of the best defensive catchers, and he was solid enough offensively to play the position. What are you going to do at catcher? What are you going to do to get more offense? Because they need it. Paul Goldschmidt was really good. Needs more help behind him. Dylan Carlson showed some flash as well, but you need more. You need more in that situation. So what are you going to do, Cardinals? Last division, the National League. Got that National League West. The Arizona Diamondbacks. Oof. I am still just kind of hurting with how they went. Some veteran free agents will probably be added. You have some young players potentially coming. Potentially there's a playoff window in the future. It just doesn't feel like it's here right now. It needs to be a lot of smart move. Sell for assets if you can. Don't oversell. Don't go in on a stud player too early. I think it's going to be development year for the Diamondbacks. A lot of young players. Getting some free agent depth in spots. But it's a development year for the Diamondbacks. Let's get all of these young guys better. I think that's the move there. The Rockies, well, we need to figure out what their direction is as well. They got to add some everyday guys that are going to help. They got to get some starting pitchers that are going to shut things down. I know what it's like in Colorado. I understand. But it just seems like they can never get a bunch of starting pitchers that matter. And they need to figure it out. I like the top of their lineup. I really do. When you have Arenado, Story, Charlie Blackmon, I like that, those top three. getting something else to complement it. That's what's next. That's what's next. You have some solid players. Put it all together. And this is just kind of a quick blow-by of the Diamondbacks and Rockies, but I don't know what more to say about them when you're in this same division as the Dodgers, who are loaded. I mean, they're going to figure out their third base position. Is it going to be Arenado? Maybe. Are they going to re-sign Justin Turner? Maybe. But they're not going to spend a lot this offseason. They're going to add just some veterans that probably want to win on nice contracts, and they really just don't have any issues. They're going to be strong. Even if they did just about nothing, this Dodgers team is going to be really good coming back next year. Why? Still got Will Smith at catcher, Max Muncy, Chris Taylor, Corey Seager, Edwin Rios, A.J. Pollock, Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts. That's a great starting lineup. And they still have, pitching, Kershaw, Buehler, Dustin May. David Price also comes back. Maybe he's going to be helping. You could figure out maybe one move that would help them a little bit. What's going to be your closer situation, because Kenley Jansen got a little shaky for you. But that's the only thing I'm necessarily overly concerned about. At least the one that I see on paper. San Diego Padres, you need to go out and get a starter. I like what they did to sign Clevenger. You have him, but you need someone to take that gap this year. Mackenzie Gore's coming. Patino, Weathers, you got some young prospects. Your rotation's going to be great in the future. If Trevor Bauer is truly all in on the 1 year, $30 million deal, San Diego, you have to think about it. Maybe you could trade for Lance Lynn. Get that 1 year. That would be solid. Maybe there's going to be other free agents they're going to think about. Paxton, Chris Archer, Corey Kluber are a few that have been thrown out there. But you need that 1 year starter. Your offense is good. That 1 year starter. Bridge that gap before Clevenger comes in. San Francisco Giants. Depth to the pitching staff as well. Try to find some more surprises. I mean, this team was fun last year. I want to see Joey Bart play. Buster Posey is coming back. Donovan Solano was a great surprise. Brandon Belt still produced. Mike Yastrzemski was an MVP candidate for part of the season last year. If you can add a little bit to that team and you get similar production as last year, we're going to be talking about this Giants team a lot more next year. They're going to be sneaky. But it all is going to start with, do we have the pitching? Do we have the pitching to get it done? And I think it's possible. That front office is smart. They're sneaky. So we'll see what happens with the Giants. So that's the to-do list for the National League offseason. We're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we're going to cover that American League offseason as well here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Well, we took the time to cover the National League, so we got to take the time to look at the American League as well. What is on that to-do list? What are the things they need to be looking at in this offseason as we get closer and closer to winter meetings, where a lot of things happen, where a lot of discussion is coming? What's going to be the big thing for all 15 of our teams in the American League? And the American League is different than the National League in the sense that I just feel like everything is very cut and dry for a lot of teams. I really do. The American League has a few more teams that I think might believe they're a better team than they truly are. And there's the chance that they could be trying to make some moves to contend or go all in. But we'll see here. So we're going to start off with the American League East. And the Baltimore Orioles were a team that were a big-time surprise. And I don't want them to overall ruin their future. And I'm scared that they're a team that could overcomplicate things and think that they can take some steps towards contention faster. keep developing your young guys and adding talent that's affordable. Don't strap yourself too early here. I want to see some of these guys become players. Now, the Nunez move that happened, that one was surprising to me. I maybe he comes back on a different deal. I don't know. But with all the young production they got this last year, why not roll it back and try to keep developing and keep seeing what you have? The starting pitching is going to be an interesting thing moving forward, but they have offensive production talent. Let's see if those possibilities really develop, and I think that's what needs to happen for Baltimore. For the Red Sox, man, is this one as easy as it gets. Understand you aren't going to contend this year. Sorry, and it hurts for me, but I'm more passionate about this as a fan. You are not going to contend this year. The American League East has the Yankees and the Rays, who are really good, and a Blue Jays team on the up and up. You have to be looking 2 seasons ahead. Stay on schedule for that. You might do some small gap filling, but don't go out and sign the major contracts, the big long-term ones. Let some guys develop. Let some others come back healthy. We don't know what's happening with Chris Sale. I'm not rushing him back. Eduardo Rodriguez, Evaldi, your starting rotation is so-so. Maybe take a flyer on a low-risk guy. That I'm okay with. Try it out. But you're going to have some offensive players that are going to produce for you, and you know you have them. Bogarts, Dahlbeck, Devers, they're going to stick around. Benintendi, we'll see what happens with him contract-wise. JD Martinez, hopefully he has a bounce back. I'm hoping that Verdugo continues. We don't know what's going to happen with Jackie Bradley Jr. But I also have the feel that maybe Christian Vasquez, if he has another hot stretch, you need to look at trading him, potentially. You have to. I mean, and trying to figure out that bullpen as well. You know your pitching is bad. You know your pitching's really bad. Try to make some nice moves towards fixing that. Now, I don't know necessarily if they're going to go after big bullpen arms, but I don't want them to overspend there. I really don't. Don't go overspend when you don't have to. Okay, small, smart moves. You're looking at 2022, not 2021. The New York Yankees, you guys are on the flip side. You want to win it next year. You want to win it. What are going to be the best moves, the best free agent moves for you? Is it going to be pitching? You have some starting pitching that you need to figure out after Garrett Cole. Is Bauer going to be your answer? Is it going to be in your lineup? Is JD Realmuto going to be the guy? Take over for Gary Sanchez? Potentially. But ultimately, I think they need to sign back LeMahieu. I don't think they can let him go. I really don't. Add to your offense. Keep it strong. That's your strength. A lot of offensive production. Don't let one of your best walk away. Man, they could look at their bullpen too, but I mean, a healthy Aroldis Chapman, a healthy Zach Britton, that's a good back end. I think they're going to be okay there. We'll see. I bet you there's going to be talks again with Hader. Well, I won't be surprised. But they're going to go into free agency. They're going to try to make one of those big-time names come back. I really think they got to get one of them. That's what's going to be in their offseason future. The Tampa Bay Rays, what another flip side here. Now, I don't know if they're going to re-sign Charlie Morton. I don't know if they're going to re-sign Mike Zunino. But if they don't, you got to have some replacements there. And the Rays are just great at finding guys to fill gaps. I'm not necessarily worried about them, but I'm also interested in this team just in the sense of let's get those young guys up there. Wander Franco, are you going to play this year? I hope you are there. I am seeing way too many videos of him on Twitter of just mashing and having fun in the Dominican League. I'm just too excited for him to get up to the MLB. He is the guy. He is the name. We will see what happens there. I would not be surprised, too, if Tampa Bay goes out and signs somebody to a one-year deal. Maybe they get in on the Chris Bryant action. Who knows? But I don't know if they're going to do anything too crazy. Too crazy. It's not going to be a multitude of moves, but maybe one or two small things to make their team better. Toronto, add to this team. Why not? They're going to go all in. Their contracts are cheap right now. They're not paying anybody really any big money. Go out and get another pitcher and see if your offense moves you forward. Maybe go get in on that Francisco Lindor. I think they're going to add one big bat, and I wouldn't be surprised if they look at a pitcher as well. They think they're a good enough team, and the talent is there. There is a lot of talent there. I think they're going to go in and try to make the move to push themselves ahead. American League Central, Chicago White Sox, you're not going to have to do a lot. But are they going to spend most of their money on an outfielder, a pitcher, a DH replacement? Could go a lot of different directions. I think they're going to go in on one guy. George Springer is potential. Trevor Bauer is potential. Hey, the Nelson Cruz news makes me think about that White Sox team a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we start hearing that rumor surface a little bit. Be watching there. But ultimately, their roster is not going to look too different, and we got to hope that maybe Tony La Russa doesn't have any more issues, because you don't like it when your manager is potentially the guy that's in the news for off-the-field concerns. Cleveland Indians, what their team is going to do with the small payroll, who knows? But I'm looking at this team, and I'm wondering, just figure out what you're going to do with Lindor. If you want to keep him and pay him, all right, let's get this done. But if you're going to trade him, cash in for your assets now. I don't know if your value is going to get that much higher. Yeah, if he's having a great season, maybe a little bit. But at the same time, people think so highly of him as a prospect right now. Why not get the full year rental instead of the half year rental? You're going to get more in return there. So figure out the situation with Lindor. Let's just get it done with. If you're going to keep him, keep him. If you're going to trade him, trade him. But if you are going to keep him, for all that is holy, get some offensive help. Get it there in Cleveland, because this team, with that pitching rotation that they have, needs to get some run production to help them out. Shane Bieber, Carrasco, Plesac, Tristan McKenzie, I am excited about all these guys. Get the run support. Help them out. Detroit Tigers, add some talent. Get out of that basement. They had, we talk about the turnaround season that the Marlins had. The Tigers were pretty competitive and pretty interesting as well. They're going to develop this year. Don't sign awful contracts. Don't block any of your young players from getting up here and playing. Still develop. But if you can get a smart move or two, upside move as well, why not? Why not, Detroit? Go in on that. Kansas City Royals, you are the same darn thing as Detroit. Add some talent around those youngsters. Don't block anybody from coming up. Develop. See what you have. It's a simple game right now for the Tigers and the Royals, because at the same time, you kind of have a blockade in front of you of a great White Sox team, a great Twins team, and a great Indians team. It's going to be hard for you to jump them, so make sure you're coming in with all the talent that you possibly can. And speaking of those Twins, what are they going to do with this team to make the move forward? Now, their offense has been great for the last few years. They've been doing a really good job with that. Continue to boost this team. Is Nelson Cruz going to come back? Are you going to add anything else to your offense? I don't think you really need to with your offense. But then what about pitching? Kenta Maeda was a great surprise for you. Jose Barrios, little bit of a down year. But you have some other things going on with Michael Pineda, Randy Dobnak. What are you going to do to up this team? They're another one that I'm interested in seeing. Are you going to be in the Trevor Bauer talks? I think the Twins totally could be. But if not, look to some smart starter moves. Tejon Walker, Jose Quintanilla. Not going to overpay for those, but they could be upside plays to help you out. The American League West, we'll start with the one that maybe is the most loaded questions, the Houston Astros. You need to get some outfielders. That's going to be it. Whether it be guys returning or new guys, that needs to be the thing. Josh Reddick, George Springer, Michael Brantley. What are we doing? What are we doing? Outfield positions are going to be huge because you still have your infield really locked down. But I don't know if there's going to be much more after that. I don't think so because they're going to have some guys coming back, pitching-wise. Greinke, McCullers will be there, but then they have young guys, Valdez, Urquidy, Javier. Your infield's pretty well set. You're not changing much there. Just figure out your outfield, and you might be back to contending. I think that's it. I don't need to say much else. And maybe they go in on one starting pitcher, but they're not going to overspend. They're not going to do it. But the team that should be overspending and trying to get a free agent pitcher, may I interest you in the Los Angeles Angels? I'm going to go down on this grave and continue to stay there. I love their offense. I love it. I love your players that are out there. But if you don't start getting some pitching help, what does it matter? What does it matter? Maybe you're going to add some bats. It's possible. It's not going to be expensive moves, but you need solid pitching arms. And if there's one thing that the Angels can 100% look into, well, after next season, Albert Pujols' contract comes off the books. And then you can really start getting crazy with looking after some pitchers. Oakland Athletics, they're going to add a bat or two as well. They're going to have to think about the back end of their bullpen. I don't know if Liam Hendricks is going to be returning. But what's going to be the decision on Marcus Semien and Robbie Grossman? The Athletics have this ability to just keep retooling, finding new guys, and they continue to be competitive. But losing those two could be a big loss. It could be a big loss. I like some young starting pitching that they have coming. But it's going to be, who's our closer next year? Do we have enough star power offense to get this done? This could end up ultimately being a big offseason for Oakland. Do you take control of the AL West? Is it truly yours? Is it truly yours? Then we got our Seattle Mariners. Hey, remember when we talked about the Tigers and the Royals? Same thing. Short-term solutions. Don't block any of your players. You have some prospects coming. You have them on the way. Kyle Lewis, your rookie of the year, was great for you. Jared Kelenic is coming. He's another one of those young prospects we're very excited about. Great stick. Pitching, we'll see what happens there. I don't have a lot of high expectations for you guys. And the thing is, the Mariners made that run at the end of last year. That was fun. Showed a little life. But I don't think there's any major expectation on this team. Still, it's still almost like a rebuild. You're developing. You're trying to get better. And in a couple of years, then the pressure is going to be on for you guys. Did you develop? Now are you ready to be that team? Are you going to spend a little bit? Are you going to build up to be the team in the AL West? And lastly, those Texas Rangers. Ugh, man. Asset collection. That's where I'm at. Trade Lance Lynn. Trade Joey Gallo. Get what you can. You don't have direction at this moment. Let's build a new team. Let's start getting as many assets as we can. And if we start to have some other guys that are greatly performing, don't be surprised if you start moving them as well. So, a lot of moves that could be made there. So that's going to be it for our American League team, their to-do list, what we're looking at for everybody. And that's going to be it for this episode, the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I want to thank you guys once again for listening. It means a great deal, your support, your download. You have no idea how much it does for us, what it means. Want to continue to thank you on that. If you have the opportunity to leave any type of comment, review, things that maybe you want us to talk about, maybe some things on the to-do list that you say that we didn't hit today, but we can still look into, and maybe there's some transaction talk. Maybe that's what you're looking for. But regardless of what it is, I want to thank you once again for tuning in. It means so much. Going to be signing off here. I'm Collin Manley here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.